Ferrari just made a drastic move behind the scenes, and it all started with a 2026 data leak that exposed more than just engine numbers. Why would Fred Vasseur personally intervene in an engineering decision that's already deep into production, risking delays and internal friction? You're about to uncover how a Mercedes innovation, hidden in plain sight, forced Ferrari to rethink their power unit structure, challenge their own assumptions, and escalate a silent arms race that's now boiling over in Maranello. And here's the part no one expected. What Ferrari just changed may not be legal in 6 months, and they know it. When Ferrari's technical staff opened the leaked 2026 Mercedes power unit file, what they saw wasn't just a benchmark, it was a threat. Tucked inside the dense telemetry and simulation overlays was a pattern no one in Maranello expected. Mercedes had found a way to regulate thermal expansion in their combustion chamber without compromising structural rigidity. That may sound like a minor tweak, but in a formula where thermal efficiency, hybrid balance, and kinetic deployment are locked into a fragile truce, it was a seismic shift. Ferrari's engineering team realized immediately their own layout, as elegant as it was, couldn't match the consistency Mercedes was about to unleash across 24 grueling race weekends. The timing couldn't have been worse. Ferrari's power unit, dubbed Project 678, had just passed its latest round of validation with FIA test rigs. Cooling systems were locked. Structural battery materials had been finalized. Even Lewis Hamilton had signed off on the throttle mapping logic in the simulator. But Vasseur knew something the engineers didn't. Mercedes wasn't chasing Ferrari. They were already 2 months ahead and pulling away. And so, in an unprecedented move, Fred Vasseur paused a section of Ferrari's development pipeline and convened a secret task force to explore re-engineering part of the combustion unit geometry. Not after the season. Not in the off-season. Right now, the engineers were split. Some argued that the leak showed Mercedes violating the spirit, if not the letter of the 2026 regulations, exploiting material behavior under high-frequency thermal cycles in ways the FIA hadn't yet codified. Others warned that Ferrari's own system, while compliant, was now predictably vulnerable. Under load, their energy deployment curve could sag due to micro-instabilities in battery casing temperatures, especially at high-altitude races like Mexico or under extreme humidity in Singapore. The leak didn't just reveal what Mercedes had built. It exposed what Ferrari hadn't accounted for. And that knowledge changed everything. Internally, Vasseur authorized a partial rollback. A new alloy, previously deemed too experimental for mainline use, was fast-tracked into limited testing. Its advantage wasn't in raw strength, but in its ability to maintain consistent behavior across fluctuating heat loads. Combined with a proposed tweak to the SiC inverter housing, the goal was clear: stabilize the entire energy delivery path under prolonged stress, even if it meant sacrificing peak performance. This wasn't about winning qualifying. It was about surviving the second stint on worn tires when the track's gone hot and the engine's screaming for thermal relief. Ferrari had stopped chasing dominance and started building endurance. But this shift came at a cost. The re-engineering required revalidation of safety parameters, new crash simulations, and a potential delay in the first power unit freeze window. Worse, it introduced political tension. Some factions within Ferrari feared that this pivot would signal weakness to the FIA and open the door for mid-season regulation clarifications, ones that might hurt Ferrari more than Mercedes. But Vasseur, confident and pragmatic, overruled them. His view was clear: better to show your hand early and influence the rulebook than wait for a rival to write it in your absence. It was a gamble, yes, but it was also a message to the entire grid: Ferrari won't be caught sleeping again. Outside Maranello, rival teams watched the unfolding drama with surgical precision. Red Bull, ever opportunistic, began re-evaluating their energy storage casings to see if Ferrari's alloy switch signaled a deeper structural vulnerability. Aston Martin's Honda unit, still lagging in torque consistency, reportedly initiated emergency thermal simulations based on assumptions from the leaked data. And the FIA? They stayed silent, but insiders confirmed they've now created a new working group to evaluate heat cycle compliance under dynamic deformation. In simpler terms, Ferrari just triggered a chain reaction across the entire hybrid field. And that leads us to the key strategic dilemma, one that every viewer needs to consider. If you were in Vasseur's position, would you have risked breaking internal momentum to chase a future threat? Would you have rolled the dice on an untested fix while your car was already locked into validation? Or would you have stayed the course, hoping the leak was exaggerated? Ferrari made their move. But what would you have done from the pit wall? Inside Ferrari's simulator suite, the effects of Vasseur's pivot were immediate and divisive. Charles Leclerc, ever the perfectionist, noticed the difference within 2 laps. The revised thermal stability maps improved rear grip during long runs, but slightly dulled the instant throttle punch he relies on in qualifying. The car no longer rotated with the same urgency at corner exit, and he reported a more delayed but smoother torque delivery. For a driver who thrives on aggressiveness, this shift felt like compromise. But for Hamilton, it was a revelation. He described the updated deployment curve as more natural, especially in variable traction zones. His feedback echoed what Mercedes engineers had once optimized around him, a system that preserves tires through intelligent hybrid response. And suddenly, Ferrari's divided driver philosophies were no longer a weakness. They were a test bed for dual development. This divergence pushed Ferrari into an unprecedented path, dual-mode hybrid logic tailored to each driver's style. Rather than settle on a single map for consistency, the team committed to parallel tracks, one focused on peak torque acceleration, Leclerc, and one on smooth long-run efficiency, Hamilton. But this is no simple toggle switch. The architecture of Project 678 wasn't designed for this kind of bifurcation. It requires adaptive cooling routing, adjustable inverter thresholds, and AI-enhanced software that learns driver behavior in real time. The tech is bleeding edge, and with it comes risk. If even one side of the system glitches during a race, it could create asymmetries between battery charge rates and power deployment. Ferrari has built a smarter power unit, but smarter means more to manage and more to potentially go wrong under pressure. Strategically, this split focus raises the stakes for Ferrari's long-term development curve. By catering to both drivers now, they risk fragmenting their upgrade trajectory. Aero packages will need to be evaluated with 2 different torque response profiles. Tire testing programs may produce conflicting data. And during high-pressure weekends like Monaco or Singapore, setup decisions will be driven by hybrid calibration trade-offs, not pure chassis balance. This kind of complexity can cripple teams that lack internal unity. But Ferrari sees it differently. Vasseur believes the complexity is a feature, not a flaw. In his view, a team that can master hybrid flexibility in 2026 will have the blueprint to dominate into 2027 and beyond. And for once, Ferrari is thinking 2 seasons ahead instead of just chasing the next one. Meanwhile, behind closed doors at Mercedes, the leak they never wanted the world to see has taken on a new meaning. Originally intended to highlight their engineering prowess, the exposed data is now a roadmap for competitors. Ferrari isn't copying it, they're using it to evolve past it. Mercedes' dual-loop cooling trick and dynamic energy dump weren't illegal. But now, with Ferrari's alloy integration and dynamic hybrid mapping gaining traction, the very advantage Mercedes flaunted may become obsolete. That's the dark irony. In revealing how far ahead they were, Mercedes may have accidentally closed the gap for everyone else. And if Ferrari's version proves more adaptable across circuits, it could turn Mercedes from pace setter into follower. Yet all of this innovation means nothing if the hardware doesn't survive the season. Ferrari's new battery casing, while more compliant, introduces unknowns in crash behavior. In a worst-case scenario, like a high-speed rear impact, the integrated energy module could affect car recovery protocols. The FIA is watching closely, and any incident that challenges safety standards could force a mid-season rule clarification. Vasseur knows this. That's why he's reportedly allocated an entire task force to monitor casing telemetry, collision force absorption, and post-race inspection metrics. Ferrari isn't just racing anymore, they're stress-testing the future of power unit safety under the spotlight of competition. Beyond the garages and technical rooms, the fans are beginning to sense the tension. Ferrari's pre-season launch will be more than a reveal. It will be a referendum on how a historic team handles a modern crisis. If the car underwhelms, the pivot will be blamed. If it excels, it will be remembered as the boldest stroke of Vasseur's leadership to date. But here's what matters most. This isn't about Ferrari chasing Mercedes anymore. It's about whether Ferrari can finally build something that makes rivals chase them again. That's the cultural shift Maranello has needed for years, and this data leak may have been the unlikely spark. So now we ask you, the audience, what matters more in Formula One today? Peak power or adaptable control? Would you prioritize one-lap supremacy or long-run strategic resilience in an era defined by complexity? This isn't a theoretical question. It's what Ferrari just bet their season on.